Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Very excited about the topic I want to talk about today, and that is Fontana's popular jazz series. Not a very well-known series, not a lot of information known about the series, but let's jump right into it. But before we do that, so let's not jump right into it. Before we do that, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you're liking the content that I'm uploading, give me a thumbs up. All right, now let's jump right into it. Okay, so last week, I'm going to say last Wednesday, I was just walking home, popped into my local record store and came across some really striking covers, some jazz releases from the 60s. I'll just quickly show these, but I'll come back to them. Okay, you can kind of see a pattern developing here. Okay, and these are just three of the releases in this, what's called Fontana's popular jazz series. So today what I want to talk about is two stories that come out of this series that was released from 1965 onward. The series was largely released in West European countries, so France, particularly in the Netherlands, and it was developed in Netherlands, in Eindhoven, I believe, Belgium, Luxembourg. So Western European story, but it's a very interesting marketing story. And secondly, it's also a fabulous kind of pop art or cover story as well. So those are the two things I want to talk about today. All right, so what is the series? The series was launched in February 1965. Again, as I said before, by Fontana, by Terry Brown at Fontana in the Netherlands. The series is, let me pull up, actually, here we go. There's as I said before, there's not a lot known about the series. I took an afternoon and found out what I could online. This is from, you can't see this at the top, but it's from jazzpopart.wordpress.com. And this is actually a listing of every single release in the series. So there are, I believe that's volume 35. 36 is Freddie Hubbard Groovy. And so that's 37. So there were 37 of these albums that were released in the 60s. All right, and there's some very unique things about the series. So the first one, I'll talk a little bit about the marketing first. And so here's some copy that I found again from the Jazz Pop Art website. Thanks to those folks there. Here's a quote from the Fontana Jazz A&R man, which his name was Terry Brown, which explains kind of the genesis or the thinking behind the series. And Terry Brown says, and here's a quote, "I think jazz is building up again after a dull period." So he probably wrote this in 64, 65. Keep that in mind. So he's building up again after a dull period. Kind of weird thing to say. Anyway, which was partly caused by firms issuing too many albums of long blowing sessions with only 3 or 4 tracks per disc. I'm sure you have a couple of those LPs in your collection. Anyway, these were all right for the real jazz fan, but not the right material for newcomers to jazz. We can probably bring converts by cheaper albums, more variety on one LP, and good, colorful sleeves. So, whereas the avid jazz collector would be a rare old 78 in a brown paper bag and willing to pay $30 for it, we need something that looks right at a low price to tempt youngsters into an unknown field. What a great quote. Okay, so this was from the start an effort to, and there's text elsewhere in this website and others that talk about basically that this series, the Fontana Popular Jazz Series, was marketed to teenagers. So an interesting kind of time capsule here. So that's kind of the marketing element of it, right? So we got about 37 re-releases. A lot of the content comes from Philips, comes from Mercury, comes from Riverside sources. Many of the albums are compilations, not all of them, and I'll talk about that in a second. And it's really almost a who's who of jazz. Let me pull that up again. I'll just sift through a few here. That one's interesting. Rhythm and Blues Dance Party. So that's kind of a mixed bag. We've got Freddie Hubbard. You'll start to see a theme emerge in some of the titles as well. Groovy! Exclamation point. We got Miles Davis and Art Blakey back to back. Actually, I think that might be the only one that doesn't have an exclamation point. Clifford Brown, Jerry Mulligan, Nat King Cole, another compilation, Coleman Hawkins, Sarah Vaughan, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that just gives you a quick idea as the kind of titles that were there, that were produced in this series, I should say. All right. So which ones did I pick up? Let's talk a little bit about those. I picked up 3, and let me take the cover off. Okay, because you'll have a better sense as to the style of these releases. All of them have what's called front projection photo. So this is kind of the pop art side of the story that I want to talk about. There's always a female model on the front. Almost always they're titled with an exclamation point. So this is kind of, what would you call that, kind of 60s pop art mod kind of aesthetic that's going on, particularly by the the fashion in the models. What's interesting is a lot of the models are also kind of posed to interact with the artist. So here you can kind of see the model kind of touching Nat, or seemingly touching Nat Adderley's head. I'll show you some other examples in a second. Okay. But yeah, so if you look on the back, you'll see, can you see it? There it is, coming into focus. That all of these photos for the Fontana Popular Jazz series were used a particular kind of photographic technique, and that is called front projection. All right, so front projection, some people may be familiar with back projection. Let's just talk quickly about that. This was a projection and film technique that was developed in the 1950s. So on the top here, you can see the back projection, where you have actually a projector shooting, or projecting rather, on a screen, and then in the front you have some live action, or the actor who's captured by another camera in the front. Okay, but what we have here, they're very similar, create very similar effects. Here, the front projection, which is what we have here, and on all of these covers, you have the, in this case, you have the model here standing in front of the screen, where the projection of the image, in this case Nat Adderley, is thrown up on the screen behind. So it creates this kind of depth of field, I guess, and it makes the figure, in this case the model, kind of pop out. So let me just scroll through here. There's some good examples of, here, let's find some old ones. Here's a great one example. A lot of car scenes in James Bond films use this projection technique as well. So he's obviously sitting in the car, camera in front of him, and he's doing all this kind of stuff, and you can see that kind of blurry background that's actually on a screen behind. So this technique was developed in the 50s, and then it was adapted for photography. So I don't believe it was used for photography, or that definitely hasn't been used before for LP covers. So fantastic. Here, let's go back to the image again. Okay, so that's a Nat Adderley collection here with Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones. A really fantastic compilation. All right. The photography this one was shot in Amsterdam by Jan van Hegel. Okay, so that's the Nat Adderley one. Here, let me just hold up the labels for those of you interested in the labels. So pretty typical Fontana, 60s Fontana label. Okay, and here's the next one I want to talk about. There were actually 5 of them there, but a couple of them weren't in great shape. I think a Quincy Jones, I left that one behind. A Lester Young was, the cover was in pretty bad shape. But this is the next one I picked up, Les McCann's "Oh Brother!" exclamation point. The pose in this particular cover is probably not as interesting as the last one. Just looks like a bad wig and a bad dancing scene. This one wasn't, the photo wasn't taken in Amsterdam. This one was taken in Studio 810 in France, near Paris. So another thing, these are Dutch issues, and you can tell that they're Dutch ones because they have this jazz club series on the top. Others from France and from Belgium do not have that. Okay, so that's the second one. These are not terribly expensive LPs. Again, they're compilations. So if you're interested in cover art, I would say this is probably the main reason why you want to collect these this series, a little bit of jazz history. But I would say that this LP here from Ben Webster, which was actually which is called Intimate here in the Fontana series. It was previously released as live, what was called Live at the Moment Jazz House in Copenhagen. So I've listened to all 3 of them. This one by far is the best sound. And I would say it's the best music as well, but that's my opinion. Sounds absolutely fantastic. This one is, so if the others are going for about, anywhere from probably, $5 to $20, I think this one's going for more like $30 to $50 online now. But if you see this one, pick it up. Absolutely great. Great, great, great. Let me just hold that a bit closer. You can kind of see the model there. And in this case, you have kind of Ben Webster interacting with the model by kind of looking in her direction. This one, like the first, was shot. The photo was shot in Amsterdam at Jan van Hengel's studio, which I did have a poke around on the internet to find some information about that photographer and the studio, but I didn't really find much information on that. If you find out anything else about the series, have any questions, drop them down in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed the content. Again, give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.